We just saw Thunderbolts, and it's a movie.
Yes! Yeah!
What's up, guys? Welcome back to the MontyVerse. We just got back from seeing Thunderbolts, and wow.
Wow is the very operative word in this case.
I mean, listen, we expected this movie to be good.
Yeah.
But I don't think we expected how good that this movie would actually become.
I think what's super impressive about the movie is I think it's fair to say it had a fantastic marketing campaign. It was innovative, it was unique, and we had ideas of what the movie would be, and it still transcended those expectations.
Yeah, I mean, there was a lot of fun stuff they did in the marketing. I think all the posters for this movie were fantastic. I think that the intrigue of the Asterisk and leaning into the Asterisk was a fun way to kind of get people to talk about the movie. But beyond the gimmicks, this movie has legs.
It has legs. I think it's so strong narratively with the character development because we all know these characters. We've seen them already. And I love that we do see these different sides to them that makes them more layered. And it all just kind of culminates into what ends up being a very unique and surprisingly touching narrative.
This is a surprisingly dark movie for the MCU, and it's very high quality. This is one of the best MCU films, period, but more so, this is one of the best MCU films since Avengers Endgame. I think that's safe to say. This is fantastic.
Absolutely, because that was a huge talking point I think that a lot of people feel similarly about. And in my head, I'm like, well, wait a minute, what about XYZ movie? Because I was trying to remember all the ones, and it's like, damn, this is actually genuinely up there. And that's not a small feat.
It's hard, right? Because you walk out of a theater, you don't want recency bias to affect the way you rate something. But after having sat with it for a couple of days, no, this movie is that good, and it deserves to be put in conversation with some of the best films the MCU has to offer. And I think a lot of that hinges on the amazing performances by the cast and the amazing character work done in the movie with these broken people.
And that is very much the reason this movie is so fantastic, is the fact that we have these characters that already had depth. We got to know them already, and putting them in this situation, there's so much more that is brought out of them that I really wasn't expecting.
Yeah, I mean, because the movie plays with the idea of the Thunderbolts. The Thunderbolts originally in the comics were a group of villains masquerading as heroes that you kind of follow along, and Baron Zemo leads them, and well, what are they going to do? Maybe some of them have spent so much time pretending to be heroes that they actually want to become heroes. And this movie takes that concept and kind of flips it and plays with it, but it stays true to the essence of the Thunderbolts in a lot of ways, and I really appreciate them for doing that. I think this film visually is really, really well done. Huge, huge shout out to the director, Jake Schreier, who I think created a lot of awesome action sequences and set pieces in this film. And I think it's also super visually appealing, especially when you have characters such as the Sentry and the Void that you can do a lot of interesting things with. The decisions they decided to ultimately make in regards to those characters worked extremely well for me as both a comic book fan and a fan of movies. I mean, talking about the cast, there's not a single character or actor that I feel like isn't operating on their highest level. To me, the true standout of this movie is obviously Florence Pugh's Yelena Belova. She is the driving character of the movie. I don't want to say main character because it truly is a well-balanced ensemble film, but she is the driving force of the film, and we spend a lot of time in her perspective. But another huge standout for me, and this, I think the scene stealer of the movie, was Lewis Pullman as Bob. I know there was a lot of question marks in regards to his casting because he came in the movie late. He replaced Stephen Yeun very close to the start of filming, and a lot of people were wondering what this performance was going to be. He's embodying the character of Bob Reynolds, the Sentry, the Void. What would that look like? And I think he is so delightful in this film. He really captures your heart, your soul, and you care for him, which I think is the most important thing when handling a character as, let's just say, complex as the Sentry.
I think you're hitting the nail on the head. I would definitely say that Pugh and Pullman are the standouts in this movie and the driving forces. And what I love especially about Yelena specifically is I talked about how we're seeing different sides of these characters. And I feel like in many surprising ways, she's kind of the empathetic center of this cast.
Yeah.
And it's a more sensitive and very touching side of her that we haven't seen before, that's been touched on, but we really get to explore that. And I think that made her even more endearing than she already was. And what's so interesting with Bob as a character is I was very skeptical of him. I obviously know what you told me about his character in the comics, and I was very iffy. But he goes in some very interesting and intriguing directions that really did tug at my heartstrings and make me care about that character.
Yeah, I mean, this film is, and I applaud Marvel for doing this. This film is definitely centered around the idea of mental health and about how we can come to terms with our past mistakes while also trying to have any sort of future. And to have a film centered on broken people is very reminiscent of what they did with Guardians of the Galaxy. And I think just like that film, this film is heavily reliant on the chemistry of this cast to propel it forward and have it succeed, and they nail it. These people are so fantastic together. And when they're all in the room at the same time, it is so much fun. But beyond that, I think what helps separate it from Guardians is just simply how much it decides to touch on the aspects of depression and mental health illnesses and addiction and all of these other really serious topics in a way that is both rewarding as a theme and as the central driving force of the film, but that doesn't get in the way of you having a good time.
No, absolutely. I mean, speaking of having a good time, another standout for me personally is our beloved Alexi, David Harbour, as Red Guardian, who the reason I want to tie him in is, one, he's very much, I think, the comedic standout of the film.
Yeah.
He just brings a smile to your face whenever he has a great line delivery or just a random comedic moment. But he also really contributes to Yelena's character and trajectory, and the two of them together are just magic.
Yeah, he helps to cut the tension, and there is a lot of tension at times in this movie, and you need someone like that not only is there to hit the punchlines, but also to help kind of, keep us from getting too dark when the story calls for it. But beyond that, I think this film is well made. Very, very well made. Huge shout out to all of the practical stunts that they were able to do in this movie. I know a lot of the actors did a lot of their stunts in the movie as well. We saw that behind the scenes footage of Florence Pugh literally diving off of that huge building, Sebastian Stan on the motorcycle. So the emphasis and use of practical effects is very well noted in this movie. It really comes across in the visuals and helps it feel like some of the more grounded Phase 2 movies in the MCU, like Captain America: The Winter Soldier.
No, I think that I completely agree with that statement, because you use the word more grounded, because everyone kind of throws around those terms, grounded, street level, whatever. But this
It's definitely not street level.
No, but I think when you have these characters who, like with a couple exceptions, cannot rely on superpowers or supernatural forces, and they have to like actually fight with fisticuffs a little bit, I think not only does that make the action more interesting, it's different, it's unique, it's more engaging, and they have more creative liberty of how they can do that on a practical level.
Yeah, and doing something like that also helps trick the audience, right? It helps ease our brain into the more effects-heavy shots of this movie. It's like in John Wick, right? How they show him reload constantly in the beginning of the movie, so that at the end of the movie, when he's firing,
right,
you're not worried about counting bullets and be like, how many shots did he need to reload? Because you in your mind already think that he's reloading. So in this movie, they do so many practical effects, and so much of the stuff looks real and feels real, that when you introduce really effects-heavy concepts like the Sentry and the Void, you're fully like engrossed in the scenario, and you're not worried about how the effects look at all. And they look actually really well.
Right, and that's actually a fantastic point, because when you have stuff more on the realistic side of things, that gives you less excuses if there is something that doesn't add up. You have to be more conscientious of that. And I think they pull that off really well, and that's a unique talent in itself.
Yeah, I think also Sun Lux's score was really good for this film. I think Sun Lux did a fantastic job of incorporating familiar pieces of music from each character and other potential Marvel movies into this film, while also having the Thunderbolts have their own unique sound, which was really hard to do, and I think they executed that very well. All right, Nikki, so on a scale of 1 to 5 asterisks,
Ooh.
what do you rate Thunderbolts?
I think the movie is overall really fantastic. I have some super minor nitpicks with things, but ultimately it's a great time. It's unique, it's daring, and I have to give it 4 out of 5 asterisks.
Wow, that's a lot of asterisks. For me, I really fell in love with this movie. I fell in love with these characters. I fell in love with their story. I really, really love the concept of introducing mental health awareness into superhero movies, because a lot of that is what really drew me into comics in the first place, is these really complex characters dealing with real life problems while also having to be these larger than life figures. And I love the way this movie handles that. For me, I'm giving Thunderbolts 4.5 out of 5 asterisks.
Whoa, that's even more asterisks.
I know. But either way, we highly recommend that you guys check out Thunderbolts when it comes out in theaters May 2nd. If you liked the video, make sure to give it a huge thumbs up. If you're new to the channel, subscribe and hit the notification bell to stay updated on all of our latest content. If you want to check out our other reviews, click the link on the page. And until next time, guys, stay versed.